Chapter 16 of Characters of Shakespeare's Plays by William Hazlitt. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Nemo and Eva Davis. Henry IV in 2 parts. If Shakespeare's fondness for the ludicrous sometimes led to faults in his tragedies, which was not often the case, he has made us amends by the character of Falstaff. This is perhaps the most substantial comic character that ever was invented. Sir John carries a most portly presence in the mind's eye, and in him, not to speak it profanely, we behold the fullness of the spirit of wit and humour bodily. We are as well acquainted with his person as his mind, and his jokes come upon us with double force and relish from the quantity of flesh through which they make their way as he shakes his fat sides with laughter, or lards the lean earth as he walks along. Other comic characters seem, if we approach and handle them, to resolve themselves into air, into thin air, but this is embodied and palpable to the grossest apprehension. It lies 3 fingers deep upon the ribs. It plays about the lungs and the diaphragm with all the force of animal enjoyment. His body is like a good estate to his mind, from which he receives rents and revenues of profit and pleasure in kind, according to its extent and the richness of the soil. Wit is often a meagre substitute for pleasurable sensation, an effusion of spleen and petty spite at the comforts of other, from feeling none in itself. Falstaff's wit is an emanation of a fine constitution, an exuberance of good humour and good nature, an overflowing of his love of laughter and good fellowship, a giving vent to his heart's ease and over contentment with himself and others. He would not be in character if he were not so fat as he is, for there is the greatest keeping in the boundless luxury of his imagination and the pampered self-indulgence of his physical appetites. He manures and nourishes his mind with jests, as he does his body with sack and sugar. He carves out his jokes as he would a capon or a haunch of venison, where there is cut and come again, and pours out upon them the oil of gladness. His tongue drops fatness, and in the chambers of his brain it snows of meat and drink. He keeps up perpetual holiday and open house, and we live with him in a round of invitations to a rump and dozen. Yet we are not to suppose that he was a mere sensualist. All this is as much in imagination as in reality. His sensuality does not engross and stupefy his other faculties, but ascends me into the brain, clears away all the dull, crude vapours that environ it, and makes it full of nimble, fiery, and delectable shapes. His imagination keeps up the ball after his senses have done with it. He seems to have even a greater enjoyment of the freedom from restraint, of good cheer, of his ease, of his vanity, in the ideal exaggerated descriptions which he gives of them than in fact. He never fails to enrich his discourses with allusions to eating and drinking, but we never see him at table. He carries his own larder about with him, and he is himself a ton of man. His pulling out the bottle in the field of battle is a joke to show his contempt for glory accompanied with danger, his systematic adherence to his Epicurean philosophy in the most trying circumstances. Again, such is his deliberate exaggeration of his own vices, that it does not seem quite certain whether the account of his hostess's bill found in his pocket, with such an out-of-the-way charge for capons and sack, with only 1 halfpenny worth of bread, was not put there by himself as a trick to humour the jest upon his favourite propensities, and as a conscious caricature of himself. He is represented as a liar, a braggart, a coward, a glutton, etc., and yet we are not offended but delighted with him, for he is all these as much to amuse others as to gratify himself. He openly assumes all these characters to show the humorous part of them, the unrestrained indulgence of his own ease, appetites, and convenience, has neither malice nor hypocrisy in it. In a word, he is an actor in himself almost as much as upon the stage. We no more object to the character of Falstaff in a moral point of view than we should think of bringing an excellent comedian, who should represent him to the life, before one of the police offices. We only consider the number of pleasant lights in which he puts certain foibles, the more pleasant as they are opposed to the received rules and necessary restraints of society, and do not trouble ourselves about the consequences resulting from them, for no mischievous consequences do result. Sir John is old as well as fat, which gives a melancholy retrospective tinge to the character, and by the disparity between his inclinations and his capacity for enjoyment, makes it still more ludicrous and fantastical. The secret of Falstaff's wit is for the most part a masterly presence of mind, an absolute self-possession, which nothing can disturb. His repartees are involuntary suggestions of his self-love, instinctive evasions of everything that threatens to interrupt the career of his triumphant jollity and self-complacency. His very size floats him out of all his difficulties in a sea of rich conceits, and he turns round on the pivot of his convenience with every occasion and at a moment's warning. His natural repugnance to every unpleasant thought or circumstance of itself makes light of objections, and provokes the most extravagant and licentious answers in his own justification. His indifference to truth puts no check upon his invention, and the more improbable and unexpected his contrivances are, the more happily does he seem to be delivered of them, the anticipation of their effect acting as a stimulus to the gaiety of his fancy. The success of one adventurous sally gives him spirits to undertake another. He deals always in round numbers, and his exaggeration and excuses are open, palpable, monstrous as the father that begets them. His dissolute carelessness of what he says discovers itself in the first dialogue with the prince. Falstaff. By the Lord, thou sayest true, lad, and is not mine hostess of the tavern a most sweet wench? Prince Henry. As the honey of Hybla, my old lad of the castle, and is not a buff jerkin a most sweet robe of durance? Falstaff. How now, mad wag? What in thy quips and thy quiddities? What a plague have I to do with a buff jerkin? Prince Henry. Why, what a pox have I to do with mine hostess of the tavern? In the same scene he afterwards affects melancholy from pure satisfaction of heart, and professes reform, because it is the farthest thing in the world from his thoughts. He has no qualms of conscience, and therefore would as soon talk of them as of anything else when the humour takes him. Falstaff. But, Hal, I prithee, trouble me no more vanity. I would to God thou and I knew where a commodity of good names were to be bought, and an old lord of council rated me the other day in the street about you, sir. But I marked him not, and yet he talked very wisely, and in the street too. Prince Henry. Thou didst well, for wisdom cries out in the street, and no man regards it. Falstaff. O thou hast damnable iteration, and art indeed able to corrupt a saint. Thou hast done much harm unto me, Hal. God forgive thee for it. Before I knew thee, Hal, I knew nothing, and now I am, if a man should speak truly, little better than one of the wicked. I must give over this life, and I will give it over, by the Lord. And I do not. I am a villain. I'll be damned for never a king's son in Christendom. Prince Henry. Where shall we take a purse tomorrow, Jack? Falstaff. Where thou wilt, lad. I'll make one, and I do not. Call me villain and baffle me. Prince Henry. I see good amendment of life in thee, from praying to purse-taking. Falstaff. Why, Hal, 'tis my vocation, Hal. 'Tis no sin for a man to labor in his vocation. Of the other prominent passages, his account of his pretended resistance to the robbers who grew from 4 men in Buckram into 11, as the imagination of his own valour increased with his relating it. His getting off when the truth is discovered, by pretending he knew the prince. The scene in which in the person of the old king he lectures the prince and gives himself a good character, the soliloquy on honour and description of his new raised recruits, his meeting with the Chief Justice, his abuse of the Prince and Poins, who overhear him, to Doll Tearsheet, his reconciliation with Mrs. Quickly, who has arrested him for an old debt, and whom he persuades to pawn her plate to lend him £10 more, and the scenes which Shallow and Silence are all inimitable. Of all of them, the scene in which Falstaff plays the part, first of the king and then of Prince Henry, is the one that has been the most often quoted. We must quote it once more in illustration of our remarks. Falstaff. Harry, I do not only marvel where thou spendest thy time, but also how thou art accompanied. For thou the camomile, the more it is trodden on, the faster it grows, yet youth, the more it is wasted, the sooner it wears. That thou art my son, I have partly thy mother's word, partly my own opinion, but chiefly a villainous trick of thine eye, and a foolish hanging of thy nether lip, that doth warrant me. If then thou be son to me, here lies the point. Why, being son to me, art thou so pointed at? Shaft, the blessed son of heaven, prove a micker, and eat blackberries? A question not to be asked. Shall the son of England prove a thief, and take purses? A question not to be asked. There is a thing, Harry, which thou hast often heard of, and it is known to many in our land by the name of pitch. This pitch, as ancient writers do report, doth defile, so doth the company thou keepest. For, Harry, now I do not speak to thee in drink, but in tears, not in pleasure, but in passion, not in words only, but in woes also. And yet there is a virtuous man whom I have often noted in thy company, but I know not his name. Prince Henry. What manner of man, an it like your majesty? Falstaff. A good portly man, in faith, and a corpulent, of a cheerful look, a pleasing eye, and a most noble carriage, and, as I think, his age some 50, or, by'r lady, inclining to 60. And now I do remember me, his name is Falstaff. If that man should be lewdly given, he deceiveth me, for, Harry, I see virtue in his looks. If then the fruit may be known by the tree, as the tree by the fruit, then peremptorily I speak it. There is virtue in that Falstaff. Him keep with, the rest banish. And tell me now, thou naughty varlet, tell me, where hast thou been this month? Prince Henry. Dost thou speak like a king? Do thou stand for me, and I'll play my father. Falstaff. Depose me? If thou dost it half so gravely, so majestically, both in word and matter, hang me up by the heels for a rabbit sucker, or a poulterer's hare. Prince Henry. Well, here I am set. Falstaff. And here I stand. Judge my masters. Prince Henry. Now, Harry, whence come you? Falstaff. My noble lord, from Eastcheap. Prince Henry. The complaints I hear of thee are grievous. Falstaff. 'S blood, my lord, they are false. Nay, I'll tickle ye for a young prince in faith. Prince Henry. Swearest thou, ungracious boy, henceforth ne'er look on me? Thou art violently carried away from grace. There's a devil haunts thee in the likeness of a fat old man. A ton of man is thy companion. Why dost thou converse with that trunk of humours, that bolting hutch of beastliness, that swollen parcel of dropsies, that huge bombard of sack, that stuffed cloak bag of guts, that roasted Manningtree ox with a pudding in his belly, that reverend vice, that grey iniquity, that father ruffian, that vanity in years? Wherein is he good, but to taste sack and drink it? Wherein neat and cleanly, but to carve a capon and eat it? Wherein cunning, but in craft? Wherein crafty, but in villainy? Wherein villainous, but in all things? Wherein worthy, but in nothing? Falstaff. I would your grace would take me with you. Whom means your grace? Prince Henry. That villainous, abominable misleader of youth, Falstaff, that old white-bearded Satan. Falstaff. My lord, the man I know. Prince Henry. I know thou dost. Falstaff. But to say, I know more harm in him than in myself, were to say more than I know. That he is old, the more the pity, his white hairs do witness it, but that he is, saving your reverence, a whoremaster, that I utterly deny. If sack and sugar be a fault, God help the wicked. If to be old and merry be a sin, then many an old host that I know is damned. If to be fat be to be hated, then Pharaoh's lean kine are to be loved. No, my good lord, banish Peto, banish Bardolph, banish Poins, but for sweet Jack Falstaff, kind Jack Falstaff, true Jack Falstaff, valiant Jack Falstaff, and therefore more valiant being as he is, old Jack Falstaff. Banish not him thy Harry's company. Banish plump Jack, and banish all the world. Prince Henry. I do, I will. Knocking, and hostess and Bardolph go out. Re-enter Bardolph, running. Bardolph. O my lord, the sheriff, with a most monstrous watch, is at the door. Falstaff. Out, you rogue, play out the play. I have much to say in the behalf of that Falstaff. One of the most characteristic descriptions of Sir John is that which Mrs. Quickly gives of him when he asks her, What is the gross sum that I owe thee? Hostess.
Marry, if thou wert an honest man, thyself, and the money too, thou didst swear to me upon a parcel gilt goblet, sitting in my dolphin chamber, at the round table, by a sea-coal fire on Wednesday in Whitsun week, when the prince broke thy head for likening his father to a singing man of Windsor, thou didst swear to me then, as I was washing thy wound, to marry me, and to make me my lady thy wife. Canst thou deny it? Did not good wife Keach, the butcher's wife, come in then, and call me gossip Quickly, coming in to borrow a mess of vinegar, telling us she had a good dish of prawns, whereby thou didst desire to eat some, whereby I told thee they were ill for a green wound? And didst thou not, when she was gone downstairs, desire me to be no more so familiarity with such poor people, saying that ere long they should call me madam? And didst thou not kiss me, and bid me fetch thee 30 shillings? I put thee now to my book oath. Deny it if thou canst.
This scene is to us the most convincing proof of Falstaff's power of gaining over the goodwill of those he was familiar with, except indeed Bardolph's somewhat profane exclamation on hearing the account of his death, "Would I were with him, wheresoever he is, whether in heaven or in hell!" One of the topics of exulting superiority over others most common in Sir John's mouth is his corpulence, and the exterior marks of good living which he carries about him, thus turning his vices into commodity. He accounts for the friendship between the Prince and Poins, from "their legs being both of bigness," and compares Justice Shallow to "a man made after supper of a cheese paring." There cannot be a more striking gradation of character than that between Falstaff and Shallow and Silence. It seems difficult at first to fall lower than the squire, but this fool, great as he is, finds an admirer and humble foil in his cousin Silence. Vain of his acquaintance with Sir John, who makes a butt of him, he exclaims, "Would cousin Silence that thou hadst seen that which this night and I have seen?" "Ay, Master Shallow, we have heard the chimes at midnight," says Sir John. To Falstaff's observation, "I did not think Master Silence had been a man of this metal." Silence answers, "Who, I? I have been merry twice and once ere now." What an idea is here conveyed of a prodigality of living! What good husbandry and economical self-denial in his pleasures! What a stock of lively recollections! It is curious that Shakespeare has ridiculed in Justice Shallow, who was in some authority under the king, that disposition to unmeaning tautology, which is the regal infirmity of later times, and which, it may be supposed, he acquired from talking to his cousin Silence, and receiving no answers. Falstaff. "You have here a goodly dwelling, and a rich." Shallow. "Baron, baron, baron! Beggars all, Sir John! Marry, good air! Spread, Davy! Well said, Davy!" Falstaff. "This Davy serves you for good uses." Shallow. A good varlet, a very good varlet! By the mass, I've drank too much sack at supper. A good varlet! Now sit down. Come, cousin." The true spirit of humanity, the thorough knowledge of the stuff we are made of, the practical wisdom, with the seeming fooleries in the whole of the garden scene at Shallow's country seat, and just before in the exquisite dialogue between him and Silence on the death of old Double, have no parallel anywhere else. In one point of view they are laughable in the extreme; in another they are equally affecting, if it is affecting to show what a little thing is human life, what a poor forked creature man is. The heroic and serious part of these two plays, founded on the story of Henry IV., is not inferior to the comic and farcical. The characters of Hotspur and Prince Henry are two of the most beautiful and dramatic, both in themselves and from contrast, that ever were drawn. They are the essence of chivalry. We like Hotspur the best, upon the whole, perhaps because he was unfortunate. The characters of their fathers, Henry IV. and old Northumberland, are kept up equally well. Henry naturally succeeds by his prudence and caution in keeping what he has got. Northumberland fails in his enterprise from an excess of the same quality, and is caught in the web of his own cold, dilatory policy. Owen Glendower is a masterly character. It is as bold and original as it is intelligible and thoroughly natural. The disputes between him and Hotspur are managed with infinite address and insight into nature. We cannot help pointing out here some very beautiful lines where Hotspur describes the fight between Glendower and Mortimer. "When on the gentle Severn sedgy bank, in single opposition hand to hand, he did confound the best part of an hour in changing parliament with great Glendower. 3 times they breathed, and 3 times did they drink, upon agreement of swift Severn's flood, who then affrighted with their bloody looks, ran fearfully among the trembling reeds, and hid his crisped head in the hollow bank, blood stained with these valiant combatants. The peculiarity and the excellence of Shakespeare's poetry is, that it seems as if he made his imagination the handmaid of nature, and nature the plaything of his imagination. He appears to have been all the characters, and in all the situations he describes. It is as if either he had had all their feelings, or had lent them all his genius to express themselves. There cannot be stronger instances of this than Hotspur's rage when Henry IV. Forbids him to speak of Mortimer, his insensibility to all that his father and uncle urged to calm him, and his fine abstracted apostrophe to honour. By heaven, methinks, it were an easy leap to pluck bright honour from the moon, etc. After all, notwithstanding the gallantry, generosity, good temper, and idle freaks of the madcap Prince of Wales, we should not have been sorry if Northumberland's force had come up in time to decide the fate of the battle at Shrewsbury. At least, we always heartily sympathize with Lady Percy's grief when she exclaims, "Had my sweet Harry had but half their numbers, to day might I," hanging on Hotspur's neck, "have talked of Monmouth's grave." The truth is that we never could forgive the Prince's treatment of Falstaff, though perhaps Shakespeare knew what was best. According to the history, the nature of the times, and of the man. We speak only as dramatic critics. Whatever terror the French in those days might have of Henry V, yet, to the readers of poetry at present, Falstaff is the better man of the two. We think of him and quote him oftener. End of Henry IV in 2 parts.